The twin suns of the planet Zarthus beat down relentlessly on the golden dunes. The heat shimmered above the sand, bending the air like it had a life of its own. Captain Daniel Rourke wiped the sweat from his forehead and adjusted the strap of his utility pack. He had been sent to survey this remote desert world for rare mineral deposits. The mission was routine, or so he thought. Daniel loved routine. It meant predictability, order, and less chance of disaster. But as he crested a high dune, his routine life changed forever. Far off, half buried in the sand, was a strange craft. Its sleek silver hull glimmered in the sunlight, but it was badly damaged. Sparks and smoke escaped from cracks in its surface. Something about the craft made Daniel's heart race. This was no ordinary transport ship. He had seen enough human and cargo shuttles to recognize that. This was something different, something alien. Without hesitation, he began running toward it. His boots sank into the soft sand, each step heavier than the last. But the closer he got, the more urgent his concern became. A faint, weak sound came from inside the craft. It was like a soft cry, barely audible over the wind. Daniel reached the craft and peered inside. What he saw made him pause. Lying on the floor, crumpled and fragile, was a being unlike any human he had ever seen. Her skin glowed with a soft, pearlescent light, and her eyes shimmered like liquid silver. Long, delicate limbs sprawled across the floor, and her head was crowned with a series of luminescent tendrils that seemed to float above her, like gentle flames. She was beautiful, regal, and clearly in pain. Daniel knew he had to act quickly. He gently lifted her into his arms. Despite her size, she felt surprisingly light, as if her body held some hidden energy that humans could not perceive. He carefully carried her down the sand dune, shielding her from the harsh rays of the twin suns with his own body. "Hold on," Daniel whispered. "You're safe now." The alien stirred weakly. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a depth of intelligence and curiosity that made Daniel catch his breath. She looked at him, trying to speak, but only a faint, musical hum escaped her lips. It was not words, but the tone carried meaning, a mixture of pain, surprise, and hope. Daniel realized that her communication was not like human speech. He had studied alien languages in his academy, but he had never encountered anything like this. Still, he tried. I'm Daniel," he said slowly, hoping she could understand him. "I'll help you. You're safe with me." The alien's tendrils pulsed softly, and she reached out a delicate hand toward his chest. Daniel felt a strange warmth, almost like a gentle pulse of life. He didn't understand the signs of it, but the connection was clear. She trusted him. The desert around them seemed endless, but Daniel had no choice. The nearest settlement was miles away, and he had no vehicle capable of moving her safely. He began the long trek, each step careful and deliberate, trying not to jostle her fragile form. As he walked, Daniel tried to keep himself calm. Just a few miles at a time, he whispered to himself, "You can do this." Hours passed. The twin suns moved across the sky, and the heat grew unbearable. Daniel's clothes stuck to his skin, and sweat stung his eyes. But he did not falter. Every step was a promise. He would not let her die in this desert. The alien's breathing was shallow but steady. Occasionally, she opened her eyes, watching him with silent appreciation. Daniel began to feel a strange bond forming between them. He had saved many people in his life, but none had looked at him this way, so quietly, yet so deeply. By mid-afternoon, the craft's beacon started to flare faintly. Daniel realized that the desert was not completely empty. Storms could come without warning. He scanned the horizon and saw dark clouds forming in the distance. A sandstorm was approaching. The realization made his heart race. "We need shelter," he muttered to himself. And fast, scanning the dunes, he spotted a series of jagged rock formations not far from his path. If he could reach them, they might provide enough shade and wind protection for both of them. With renewed determination, he pressed on. Every step became a battle. The sand shifted beneath him, sometimes making him stumble, but he held her tighter, whispering encouragements. Occasionally, he paused to rest, using his body to shield her from the relentless sun. She remained silent, her eyes closed, tendrils glowing faintly. as if absorbing the warmth and light of his determination. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the rocks. He lowered her gently to the ground, propping her against a smooth surface that offered shade. The relief that washed over him was immense. For a moment, he allowed himself to collapse beside her. Catching his breath and feeling the satisfaction of survival, the alien's eyes opened again. And this time, she made a sound soft, melodic, almost like a song. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had no idea what the sound meant, but he felt as if she was trying to speak directly to him, sharing a thought beyond words. "You're safe," Daniel said softly. "I'll protect you. Whatever happens, I'll keep you safe." She pulsed softly in response, and for the first time, Daniel felt as if the harsh desert was not quite so lonely. There was someone here who recognized his courage, his effort, and his heart. Night fell over the desert, and the twin suns dipped below the horizon. Stars appeared, scattered like diamonds across the dark sky. Daniel looked at her, marveling at the ethereal beauty of her glowing skin against the shadowed rocks. "I don't know where you came from," he admitted quietly, "or why you're here. But I promise, I won't leave you. Not now. Not ever." The alien reached out a hand again, resting it gently on his arm. The warmth was comforting, a soft reassurance that her life was now intertwined with his own. As Daniel prepared to keep watch through the night, he realized something important. This was no longer just a survey mission. This was the beginning of a journey unlike any he had ever imagined, a journey that would test his strength, his courage, and his heart. And as he watched the stars reflect in her silver eyes, he understood that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them together with the alien queen in his care. The desert night was long and cold, but Daniel stayed by her side. Every whisper of wind, every distant shift of sand, reminded him of the fragile balance of life in this world. He did not flinch. He would carry her, protect her, and endure anything the desert or the galaxy could throw at them. And somewhere deep inside, he felt it. This was only the beginning. For Captain Daniel Rourke, the routine survey had ended. For the alien queen, a new hope had begun. And together, they would face the scorching desert, unknown dangers, and perhaps the stars themselves. The first light of dawn touched the desert with a pale gold, painting the dunes in soft shades of warmth. Captain Daniel Rourke had spent the night beside the alien queen, keeping watch as the winds whispered over the sand. She had remained mostly silent, but every time he looked at her, he felt an unspoken gratitude in her glowing eyes. That alone gave him strength for the journey ahead. Daniel knew the trek would not be easy. The nearest settlement, where he could find proper aid and contact support teams, was more than 90 miles away. Carrying someone as fragile as the alien queen would be exhausting, but he had made a promise. He would not leave her behind. He lifted her carefully into his arms once again, feeling the lightness of her body yet sensing the fragility beneath. She rested her head against his shoulder, her glowing tendrils drifting gently in the warm morning air. The desert was quiet, almost reverent, as if it knew the importance of this moment. "All right," Daniel said softly, speaking more to himself than to her. "One step at a time. We can do this." The first few miles were manageable. The sand was firm enough for him to walk steadily, and the sun had not yet risen fully, leaving a cooler, more tolerable temperature. He kept a steady pace, balancing her weight, careful not to jostle her. Every so often, he would pause and gently adjust her position, whispering reassurances. She opened her eyes at one of these pauses. Daniel noticed that she was observing him closely, as if trying to understand the human who carried a queen across the desert. There was curiosity in her gaze, a quiet fascination. He smiled, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You don't have to speak," he said. "Just stay with me." Her eyes seemed to shimmer brighter in response. Though she did not speak, Daniel felt a connection forming, a bond that needed no words. In those early hours of the day, under the twin suns, a silent trust grew between them. By mid-morning, the sun climbed higher, and the heat became intense. Sweat soaked his shirt, dripping down his back. Every step became heavier as the sand shifted beneath his boots. At one point, he stumbled on a loose dune, and for a brief second, panic flared. but instinct took over. He tightened his hold on the queen and regained balance. "You see?" he said to her with a weak laugh. "Nothing's going to stop us." "Not today," she pulsed softly in response, almost like a small heartbeat of encouragement. Daniel felt warmth spread through him, not just from the sun, but from the quiet understanding that they were facing this challenge together. As the hours passed, the landscape grew more unforgiving. High dunes rose like golden waves, and the wind carried fine grains of sand that stung the skin. Daniel's lips cracked, his throat dry, yet he refused to rest for long. Every minute spent pausing was a minute farther from safety. To distract himself from the pain and fatigue, he began talking to her, telling stories about Earth. He described mountains, oceans, and forests that stretched farther than the eye could see. He talked about the stars, about human art and music, about courage and kindness. Though she did not speak, he noticed the way her tendrils flickered when he described something she seemed to enjoy. "You will like Earth," he said at one point. "It's full of strange things, but humans try their best." A soft hum came from her, melodic and gentle. Daniel paused, listening. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, and yet it carried meaning. He felt her admiration and curiosity through it, as if she were silently studying him, learning what it meant to be human. When the sun reached its peak, the heat became unbearable. Daniel's clothes clung to his skin, and his legs ached with every step. The queen's form felt lighter with each mile, but he could not ignore the strain on his own body. He stopped to let her rest, finding a small depression in the sand where the wind had created a natural shade. "Stay here for a moment," he said, lowering her gently. "I'll catch my breath." She rested her glowing head against the sand, and for a moment, Daniel let himself feel the exhaustion fully. He wiped his brow, breathing heavily, and studied her. Even in her weakened state, she radiated dignity and grace. She was a queen, and yet here she was, relying entirely on a human. The thought humbled him, but it also strengthened his resolve. After a short break, he continued. The desert seemed endless, but he learned to focus on small goals, just reaching the next dune, the next shadow of rock. Step by step, mile by mile, he pushed forward. During the long trek, he began noticing details about her that he had not before. Her eyes reflected the sunlight like mirrors, yet they held emotion deeper than human eyes could express. Her tendrils shifted color slightly depending on her mood, glowing a soft blue when she was calm, a gentle pink when curious or pleased. Daniel marveled at the subtle beauty, but also at the intelligence and awareness in every movement. At one point, as he climbed a particularly steep dune, the queen's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. He glanced down, surprised, and found her looking at him intently. Her eyes conveyed something that words could not: trust, gratitude, and a quiet bond that had grown over these hours of struggle. "You're stronger than I imagined," she finally hummed, a sound that vibrated gently in his ears. Daniel smiled despite the heat and pain. "I have to be," he replied. "For you." By late afternoon, Daniel noticed the first signs of fatigue in her. Her breathing had become shallower, and her glow dimmed slightly. He realized that the journey was taking a toll on both of them. The thought worried him, but he refused to panic. There had to be a way to keep going. He began rationing water, drinking sparingly, and offering small sips from the canteen to her. Though she did not drink much, the gesture seemed to comfort her. She pulsed softly in response, and for the first time, Daniel felt a small spark of hope. As the day waned, he spotted something in the distance, a series of jagged rocks forming a natural ridge. It wasn't much, but it promised shade and shelter for the night. A surge of energy filled him. "Almost there," he whispered. "Just a little farther." The final stretch was the hardest. His legs screamed, his arms burned from carrying her, but he refused to give up. Every step brought them closer to safety. He imagined the relief she would feel when she could rest fully, when she could finally regain strength. That thought carried him forward like a hidden fuel. Finally, as the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he reached the rocks. Gently, he laid her down against a smooth surface, shielding her from the last rays of the sun. She closed her eyes and pulsed slowly, as if resting her energy. Daniel collapsed beside her, exhausted but triumphant. He had carried her 90 miles through a scorching desert, and though they were both weary, they had survived. In that quiet moment, under the first stars of the evening, he realized something extraordinary. Their bond had grown stronger than either of them could have imagined. "You made it," he said softly, brushing a strand of glowing tendril from her face. "We made it together." Though she did not speak, her eyes reflected a depth of emotion that spoke louder than words. Daniel understood she trusted him, relied on him, and perhaps, in some unspoken way, respected him. As the desert night settled around them, Daniel prepared to keep watch once again. The journey was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more dunes to cross, and more obstacles to overcome. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of pride. They had survived one of the hardest parts of their journey, and somewhere deep inside, he knew that their adventure was only beginning. The human who carried a queen had proven not just his strength, but his courage, his determination, and above all, his heart. And in the vast, unforgiving desert, that was the most extraordinary power of all. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the sand dunes in soft shades of orange and gold. Captain Daniel Rourke stirred beside the alien queen, careful not to disturb her fragile rest. The night had been long and surprisingly quiet, with only the faint whisper of wind through the dunes as company. He had kept a steady watch, as he always did, and now, with renewed determination, it was time to continue their journey. The queen's breathing was steady, her glow faint but warm. Daniel lifted her gently, feeling the light weight of her body as though she were partly made of air. "We have a long way to go today," he said softly, "but I promise we'll find something, a place where you can rest fully." For hours, they moved across the desert. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh light over the rippling dunes. Daniel's legs burned with each step, his shoulders ached from carrying her. But he focused on small goals, just the next dune, just the next shadow. With every step, the bond between them grew stronger. The queen's tendrils glimmered faintly in response to his words, a silent acknowledgement of his care. By midday, they had crossed several miles of unbroken sand. Sweat dripped from Daniel's brow, and his throat was dry, but he refused to pause for long. The queen's quiet presence gave him strength, and her trust in him made every step worthwhile. As they climbed a particularly high dune, Daniel caught sight of something unusual in the distance. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a mirage caused by the heat waves rising from the sand. But as they drew closer, he realized it was real, a hidden oasis, shielded by tall crystal formations that glittered like diamonds in the sunlight. The sight took his breath away. "Look," he whispered to the queen. "We've found something. Safe." The queen's eyes fluttered open as he lowered her to the sand, and she followed his gaze. Her glowing tendrils brightened slightly, and she let out a soft, melodic hum that vibrated gently in the air. Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. She recognized the safety, and perhaps she felt hope for the first time in days. The oasis was small but perfect. A pool of clear, sparkling water sat at its center, surrounded by lush vegetation that seemed impossible in such an arid desert. Strange, luminous flowers bloomed along the edges, and crystal spires formed a natural barrier from the desert winds. Daniel could hardly believe his eyes. Here, they could rest, recover, and regain strength for the final stretch of their journey. Carefully, he set the queen down near the water. She lowered herself gracefully, letting her body touch the soft sand and cool water. Her glow pulsed gently, a sign of relaxation and relief. Daniel knelt beside her, dipping a cloth into the pool and cooling his face and arms. The water was a miracle, a gift from the desert itself. "You can rest here," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." For the first time in days, the queen spoke in a series of musical notes, each one distinct and expressive. Daniel listened closely, and though he could not understand the words, he felt the meaning behind them. She was grateful, she was curious, and most importantly, she was alive because of him. As they rested, Daniel noticed the subtle beauty of the oasis. The crystals reflected light in soft rainbows, and the flowers emitted a gentle fragrance that filled the air. Small creatures, strange yet harmless, scuttled along the water's edge, and birds with translucent wings flitted through the crystal formations. Daniel realized that this place was untouched by any other life, an oasis hidden from the harshness of the desert. "This is incredible," he said, almost to himself. "It's like a secret world." The queen hummed again, this time more softly, as if agreeing. She reached out and touched the crystal spires with delicate fingers, causing them to shimmer more brightly. Daniel watched, fascinated, as she seemed to communicate with the environment in a way humans could not. There was intelligence in every gesture, grace in every movement. Over the next few hours, Daniel took the opportunity to tend to her needs. He cleaned minor scrapes, offered water, and helped her rest in a position that would be comfortable. She remained quiet most of the time, but her tendrils glowed brighter with every small act of care. He realized that the bond between them had grown beyond simple trust. They were learning to communicate without words, to understand each other through presence and action. "You're stronger than you look," he said softly, smiling, "and more patient than I could ever be." She pulsed lightly in response, a faint ripple of light moving across her body. Daniel understood that this was her way of acknowledging him, a silent compliment or expression of amusement. It made him laugh quietly, despite the exhaustion still weighing on him. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, Daniel felt a sense of calm wash over him. The desert was behind them, at least for now, and the hidden oasis provided safety and comfort. He looked at the queen and noticed the curiosity in her eyes. She had begun to study him closely, watching his movements, his expressions, and even the way he interacted with the environment. "You're learning," Daniel said with a grin. "I guess I'm teaching you about humans." She hummed again, soft and melodic, and reached out to touch his arm. The warmth of her touch was gentle, reassuring, and Daniel felt a surge of pride. This was not just a physical journey, they were discovering each other's worlds, learning about courage, kindness, and the strengths that lay within. As night fell, the oasis transformed into something magical. The crystals reflected starlight, creating a shimmering canopy above them. The water sparkled like liquid silver, and the plants glowed faintly in the soft darkness. Daniel and the queen sat quietly together, watching the stars. He spoke softly about Earth, the forests, the mountains, and the oceans. He described human cities, music, and art, sharing stories of hope and courage. The queen listened, her tendrils pulsing in rhythm with his words. Though she did not speak in human language, Daniel understood that she was absorbing everything, learning about humans and their resilience. He realized that this was part of the bond between them, the exchange of knowledge, respect, and understanding. "You like humans," he said. "We're not perfect, but we try. We care. We help each other. That's what makes us strong." She hummed softly, and for the first time, Daniel felt as if she were smiling. The glow of her body brightened gently, reflecting the starlight around them. It was a simple gesture, but it filled him with a sense of accomplishment and connection. As the night deepened, Daniel kept watch near her. He had learned from the desert that safety was never guaranteed, and though the oasis seemed perfect, he would not let his guard down. He made sure she was comfortable, adjusting her position and ensuring she had water. In the quiet hours, Daniel reflected on the journey so far. He had carried a queen 90 miles through a scorching desert, endured heat and exhaustion, and formed a bond that transcended species. It was a testament to human courage, compassion, and determination. And as he looked at her glowing form resting peacefully, he knew that their adventure was only beginning. The hidden oasis had not only provided safety, it had given them a chance to learn from each other, to understand the strengths and beauty of both their worlds. Daniel realized that the queen's mission, whatever it might be, was intertwined with his own journey now. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, not just as human and alien, but as companions bound by trust, courage, and hope. As the stars shone above them, Daniel whispered, "We'll get through this, together." The queen pulsed softly in response, a sign that she understood. In that quiet, magical place, amidst the crystal spires and glowing flowers, Daniel felt a profound sense of purpose. He had carried her through unimaginable heat and hardship, and in return, she had given him trust, respect, and a connection that transcended words. And as the night deepened, the desert's harshness seemed a distant memory. Here, in the hidden oasis, they could rest, recover, and prepare for the next stage of their journey, a journey that would take them far beyond the desert, into a world of challenges, discovery, and perhaps the beginning of a bond that could change the fate of two worlds for Daniel and the Queen. The hidden oasis was more than just a place, it was a promise that, no matter how difficult the journey, they would face it together. And in the vast, silent beauty of the desert night, that promise shone brighter than any star. The hidden oasis had given Captain Daniel Rourke and the alien queen a brief, welcome respite from the desert. The soft glow of the crystals and the gentle ripple of the water had restored some of their strength. But Daniel knew that they could not stay. The oasis was safe, but the desert beyond it was still dangerous. Their goal was clear: reach the rescue point where the Queen's people could find her. He lifted the Queen carefully into his arms once more. Her glow had returned, faint but steady, and she hummed softly, a melodic sound that comforted him. He had come to understand that these sounds were her way of communicating emotions: gratitude, trust, curiosity, and now they felt like a conversation between two worlds. "Let's keep going," he said, his voice calm but determined. "We're almost there." The terrain beyond the oasis was not as forgiving. The sand stretched endlessly, dotted with jagged rocks and dry gullies. The sun was high, casting sharp shadows that hid dips and ridges. Daniel adjusted his footing carefully, mindful of the Queen's fragile form. Step by step, he moved forward, every movement deliberate and precise. Hours passed. The sun climbed relentlessly, and sweat poured down Daniel's face and soaked his shirt. His legs ached from carrying her, and the heat pressed down like a heavy weight. But he refused to falter. The Queen's presence, her silent trust, gave him strength he did not know he possessed. "You're doing well," he whispered. "We're going to make it," she responded with a soft hum, almost like a song. Daniel took it as encouragement, and for a moment, a smile broke through his exhaustion. The desert was harsh, but together, they were stronger than it seemed. As they climbed a series of dunes, Daniel spotted a faint shimmer in the distance. At first, he thought it might be another mirage, but the shimmer grew brighter as they approached. His heart lifted. "That's it," he whispered. "The rescue point. We're almost there." The rescue point was a natural plateau, flat and wide, perfect for a ship to land. Crystal spires rose along its edges, catching the sunlight and creating dazzling reflections. Daniel could see faint markings on the rock's symbols that he guessed were left by the Queen's people to guide travelers. His pace quickened, adrenaline helping him overcome the fatigue that had slowed him for hours. Finally, he reached the plateau and set the Queen down gently. She rose slightly, her glowing tendrils waving in the light as she scanned the horizon. Then, in the distance, a sleek, silver ship descended gracefully, its engines humming softly. Daniel's heart pounded. Rescue was here. The ship landed carefully on the plateau, and a ramp extended. Figures emerged, tall, elegant beings with luminous skin and flowing forms. Unmistakably the Queen's people. They moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, yet their eyes were kind. Filled with concern and relief, the Queen straightened, and Daniel noticed a subtle change in her posture. She radiated dignity, authority, and pride. Daniel had carried her through deserts, protected her from heat and exhaustion, and now he stood before her people. He wondered how they would react out as the crew approached. Their eyes widened at the sight of him. A human barely clothed from the desert heat had carried their Queen 90 miles. Across a scorching desert, there was awe in their gaze, mixed with gratitude and surprise. The Queen spoke, her voice melodious but firm, carrying across the plateau. Though Daniel could not understand the words fully, the meaning was clear. She was praising him, crediting him for her survival. Her people nodded, approaching him with gestures of respect and thanks. Daniel felt a mix of pride and humility. He had never sought recognition, but this acknowledgement from the Queen and her people warmed him. He had done what any human with courage and compassion would do, yet here. It was honored across worlds. One of the crew stepped forward, offering a water flask. Daniel accepted gratefully, feeling the cool liquid soothe his parched throat. He looked around at the luminous beings, fascinated by their elegance and composure. They were unlike any species he had encountered, but there was a warmth in their expressions, a genuine appreciation for his actions. The queen moved closer to him, her glowing tendrils brushing lightly against his arm. Daniel felt a strange mix of awe and humility. He had carried her through deserts, endured heat and exhaustion, and now she was here, standing tall and graceful. Acknowledging him, "You've done more than anyone could ask," she hummed softly, her eyes meeting his. Daniel understood the sentiment perfectly. She was expressing gratitude and respect, a bond formed through shared struggle and trust. The crew prepared the queen for transport back to their homeworld. Daniel assisted where he could, helping her board with care. Even in their formal movements, there was a warmth of recognition of his efforts and courage. He felt honored beyond words. Before the queen entered the ship, she turned to him once more. Her glowing tendrils brushed gently against his arm, a silent promise of continued connection. Daniel felt a surge of emotion. This was more than rescue, it was acknowledgement, respect, and a bond that transcended species. "You'll be remembered," she hummed softly, a musical phrase that vibrated with meaning. Daniel could feel the sincerity behind it. He had not only saved her life, but also strengthened the bond between humans and the Luminari. As the ship prepared to depart, Daniel watched the queen and her crew. He felt a mixture of relief and wonder. The desert, harsh and unyielding, had tested them both, but together they had prevailed. He had carried a queen across 90 miles of scorching sand, faced exhaustion and heat, and emerged stronger, wiser. In honor, the ship lifted gracefully into the sky, leaving Daniel standing on the plateau. He felt the wind against his face and looked at the horizon. The desert was quiet once more, but he knew that the journey had changed him. He was no longer just a human surveyor, he was someone who had proven courage, compassion, and resilience across worlds. As the stars began to appear in the evening sky, Daniel felt a sense of calm and fulfillment. He had faced one of the greatest challenges of his life and emerged with honor. The queen's trust, her people's acknowledgement, and the bond they shared were rewards beyond measure. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to sit, leaning against a rock. The desert stretched endlessly around him, yet he felt no fear. He had carried a queen, protected her through a scorching desert, and helped bridge two worlds. That was a story that would live in his memory forever, a testament to human strength, heart, and courage. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the desert and the stars, he felt a sense of purpose growing. This journey was not over. The queen's mission, the bond they shared, and the lessons of courage and compassion would guide him into new challenges. As the night deepened, Daniel remained on the plateau, watching the stars and remembering the journey that had brought him here. He knew that humanity's place in the galaxy was stronger than ever, not because of technology or power, but because of the human heart, its kindness, courage, and determination. And though the queen had returned to her people, Daniel felt her presence still. In the glow of the desert night and the reflection of the stars, he knew that their paths were forever connected. They had faced the impossible together, and in doing so, had proven that the human spirit could shine brightly even in the harshest worlds. The wind carried a faint melody from the departing ship, a song of gratitude and trust. Daniel smiled, feeling the weight of the journey lift from his shoulders. The desert had tested him, but it had also revealed something extraordinary, the power of courage, compassion, and the human heart. And as he gazed at the horizon, he realized something even more important. The bond he had formed with the queen, the respect she had shown, and the trust they shared was more than a moment in time. It was a connection that could last across worlds, across galaxies, and across hearts. Captain Daniel Rourke had carried a queen through a desert. But more than that, he had carried the spirit of humanity into the stars. The silver ship had returned to the skies, leaving Captain Daniel Rourke standing on the desert plateau. The wind brushed his face softly, carrying with it the faint memory of the queen's melodic hum and the shimmer of her glowing tendrils. Though she was gone from sight, he could still feel her presence, a quiet connection that had formed across hardship, trust, and courage. Days passed as he returned to human settlements, reporting the events to his superiors. His tale of endurance and compassion spread quickly, earning him respect among fellow explorers. Yet, despite accolades, Daniel could not stop thinking of the alien queen. She was more than a remarkable being. She was a symbol of the bond between their worlds. Then, without warning, a message arrived. A small vessel landed gently in the human outpost, its design unmistakably luminary. Daniel's heart raced. The queen had come back. When the ramp lowered, she stepped out, glowing softly under the sun, her presence commanding yet graceful. Behind her, a few luminary attendants remained, polite and respectful, giving Daniel space. She approached him directly, eyes shining with an intensity he had not seen before. "Daniel," she hummed, the sound rich and musical, carrying meaning beyond human words. He felt the vibration in his chest as if her emotions were reaching him directly. "I didn't expect to see you again," he said, trying to mask the surge of emotion he felt. Is everything all right?" Her tendrils shimmered softly. She spoke in a more formal tone, and though he could not understand every word, the meaning was clear. She had returned for a reason. Daniel waited, curious and cautious. Then, the queen's voice softened, and the words became almost understandable through emotion alone. She wished to honor the bond they had formed, and she wanted him to come with her not as a guest, but as a partner. Daniel blinked. He had carried her across a scorching desert, endured heat and exhaustion, faced countless obstacles. He had done all of it out of compassion, yet here she was, offering a connection he had never imagined, a partnership, a proposal that went beyond words and species. I don't know what to say," Daniel admitted. "I didn't do any of it for reward. I just wanted to help." She stepped closer, her glowing form radiating warmth. "You showed the greatest strength," she hummed softly. "Not in power, not in skill, but in heart. That is why I return." Daniel's thoughts raced. Humans had accomplished great things with technology and exploration, yet this was different. This was recognition of his human spirit, courage, compassion, and endurance. He realized that what she offered was more than personal. It was a symbol of unity between their worlds, a connection that could strengthen trust and friendship across the galaxy. The queen extended her hand. Her glow pulsed gently, each pulse carrying emotion. Daniel reached out, and as their hands met, he felt a warmth unlike any he had experienced before. It was a simple touch, yet it spoke of trust, respect, and the shared experiences that had bound them together. "You are remarkable, Daniel," she hummed. "I offer you this bond, not as a demand, but as an honor. To walk with me, to see the universe together, and to strengthen the ties between our peoples." Daniel swallowed, humbled and overwhelmed. He had carried her through 90 miles of desert, but now he realized he had carried something much more significant, the potential for unity between worlds. He had shown humanity at its best, and now the universe offered him an extraordinary opportunity. I would be honored," he finally said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling within him. "But I need to learn, to understand, to do right by you and your people." The queen's tendrils shimmered in approval. She stepped back slightly, acknowledging his words and giving him space to process. Then, with a graceful motion, she gestured to her attendants. "We shall journey together," she hummed, "and you will see all that is important to our people." Over the next few days, Daniel accompanied her and her crew aboard their ship. The vessel was a marvel of design and technology, but what impressed him most was the culture it represented. Every action of the Luminari reflected care, harmony, and intelligence. They were not just a people of advanced science, they were a people of wisdom and heart. As the ship traveled through the stars, Daniel learned more about the Queen and her responsibilities. She had been exploring new alliances, ensuring peace, and studying other worlds. Her mission was not one of conquest, but of cooperation and understanding. Daniel realized that her proposal was more than personal. It was a step towards strengthening connections between humanity and the Luminari, a partnership that could endure across galaxies. During quiet moments, the Queen spoke to him in her melodic hums, teaching him about her people, their values, and their history. Daniel listened carefully, absorbing everything, and shared stories of Earth, of humans, their struggles and triumphs. It was a delicate exchange and understanding of each other's strengths, hopes, and fears. One evening, as they watched a binary star system glittering in the distance, the Queen turned to him. Her glow was soft, reflecting the starlight, and her voice carried a sincerity that resonated deeply. "You have changed my perspective of humanity," she hummed. "Through you, I have seen courage, compassion, and patience. These qualities are rare in the galaxy, and they bind us together now." Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "We humans have our faults," he admitted, "but we also try. We care. We help. That's what makes us strong." The Queen's tendrils pulsed, and for a moment, Daniel felt the full weight of the trust she placed in him. It was more than recognition, it was partnership, understanding, and mutual respect. They had journeyed together through a desert, faced challenges, and formed a bond that transcended words, species, and worlds. As the days passed, the connection deepened. Daniel and the Queen shared meals, stories, and quiet moments watching the stars. He learned to understand the subtleties of her communication, the way her glow shifted with emotion, and the meaning behind her melodic hums. Each moment strengthened their bond, a connection rooted in shared experience and trust. Finally, the Queen brought Daniel to her homeworld, a planet of light, crystal forests, and flowing rivers of iridescent water. Her people greeted him with respect, honoring the courage and compassion he had shown. Daniel realized that his actions had not only saved a life, but had strengthened the relationship between two civilizations. In the grand hall of the Luminari Council, the Queen turned to Daniel. Her glow brightened, filling the room with soft, shimmering light. She extended her hand once more, this time formally, and spoke with the full weight of her authority. "Daniel Rourke," she hummed, "you have shown the highest qualities of humanity. I offer you my partnership, not only in life but in purpose. Walk with me, share our journey, and unite our peoples." Daniel took a deep breath. He looked at the Queen, at her people, and at the stars visible through the crystal ceilings of the hall. He realized that this moment was bigger than him. It was a choice to embrace compassion, courage, and connection across the galaxy. "I accept," he said firmly, "not just for us, but for the bond between our worlds. Together, we will face the future." A soft melody filled the hall, the Queen's hum carrying joy, gratitude, and harmony. Daniel felt the unity of two civilizations reflected in the music, a promise that the strength of heart and courage could shape destinies across the stars. As the ceremony concluded, Daniel and the Queen stood side by side. They gazed at the stars, knowing that their journey had only just begun. The desert, the hardships, and the long miles behind them had created something extraordinary, a bond that bridged species, worlds, and hearts. Daniel felt pride, humility, and hope all at once. He had carried a Queen through a desert, faced exhaustion, and endured heat beyond measure. But more than that, he had carried humanity's spirits, its courage, compassion, and resilience into a new chapter of the galaxy. And now, standing beside the alien Queen, he knew that together they could face anything. They were partners, allies, and friends united by trust and shared experience. Humanity had proven its strength, and through this bond, the stars themselves seemed brighter. For Captain Daniel Rourke and Queen Alira, the journey was not over. It had evolved, transformed into a new adventure, one of unity, discovery, and the enduring power of the human heart. And somewhere in the vast, infinite galaxy, a story of courage, compassion, and connection echoed a tale of a human who carried a Queen, and a Queen who saw in him the very best of humanity. Together, they had created something extraordinary, a promise that would shine across worlds and stars for generations to come.